So let's move on to what I think is the most entertaining, but sometimes considered one of the more controversial aspects of public choice. And that's our third key insight. And that is that voters are ignorant and that their turnout is relatively low in elections. So, like I said, this tends to be a very entertaining insight to the study, but it's also a very controversial one. Voter ignorance? Well, why are voters ignorant? Why is it that they don't seem to know that much about politics or laws or bills that they might be voting for or politicians that they're trying to support? Well, it turns out the decisiveness of their vote, the idea that their vote will make a difference, that probability is very, very low. So we tend to see voters not know that much simply because they know their vote doesn't count all that much in the grand scheme of an election. So let's think of an experiment and see what this means. Well, one experiment I like to do, and I would do if we were in class, is I would have all of you take out your phones and I'd say unlock them, and I'd do the same. We just kind of show each other what our unlocked phone looks like. And then I'd go up to one of you and I'd say, I'm going to take your phone. So I would take it from you. And then I would say, all right, I'm now going to read through all of your emails, your pictures, your text messages, your Snapchats, your TikToks, whatever. And I'm going to make public to our audience there in the classroom anything that I want, anything that I might find humorous or mock-worthy. I'm going to share it with everybody. Well, how much would you pay to get out of that situation? How much would you pay me to not rummage through your phone, your email and pictures and everything else, and I would just give you back your phone? Okay? I mean, how much would you be willing to pay to get out of that situation? Probably quite a bit, at least for some of you. Or what if I did this instead? What if instead I assigned a random number generator to assign you each a number? So each of you in the class has a number. And that random number generator, it selects one of you from the audience, one of you from the classroom. Okay, so it picks you. Then I'm going to flip a coin twice. And if it comes up heads both times, we keep going. So I'll ask you, pick a number between 1 and 100. And if I guess it right, I'm going to say, all right, pick another number between 1 and 100. And if I guess that right, then I can look through your phone and I can share with the class all of the dirt that I find on there. That's about a 1 in 1 million chance. So in that scenario, think to yourself, how much would you be willing to pay to get out of that situation? Chances are you probably wouldn't be willing to pay that much. And that's because the probability that that would happen, that I would select you, flip the coin 2 times, and guess 1 in 100 2 times in a row, it's pretty low. The chances of that happening, they are low. Well, we can apply that line of reasoning to voting as well. What do I mean by that? So public choice economics asks a pretty simple question. Why do people vote? I mean, if the probability of decisiveness is so low, if it's basically a zero likelihood that you're going to have an effect on the election, okay, why do you bother doing it? I mean, there's 2 theories. Okay, so there's this idea of instrumental voting and expressive voting. Well, instrumental voting, this is voting that's aimed at influencing election outcomes. You want some sort of preferred policy enacted. Expressive voting, this is meant to just kind of send a signal about yourself to others. Okay? So some examples might help us clarify what these mean. We could think of instrumental voting as I do A in order to get B. So a car, that's a good example. My car, okay, it gets me from my apartment to work. It gets me from point A to point B. That's what I want it to do. It's very instrumental. That is the preferred outcome that I'm looking for. Same with just a regular old watch. Okay, it tells time. I just want it to tell time. Okay? That's all. It's very instrumental. Whereas expressive voting is like having a car, but it's like having a really cool car, a really fast car. Because you want that car, one, to get you from point A to point B, and that might be true, but really, you're just trying to show off. You just want to express to people, hey, I'm awesome. Look at me driving this fast car. I mean, same with a really fancy watch like a Rolex. Yes, it tells time, but you really want to signal that you're doing well. You're well off, you've got style, you got taste. So it turns out a lot of people vote in this expressive manner. Most people claim to be instrumental voters, but a lot of voters are very ignorant. And if they were instrumental voters, the idea that they want some sort of specific policy enacted, wouldn't they know about the policy or the politician that is enacting this policy or claiming to try and enact this policy? It turns out they know very little about the people and policies that they claim to support. And this is because, well, what's our rule of rational life? Marginal benefit equals marginal cost. I mean, what's the benefit versus the cost of being an informed voter? And it turns out the benefit's pretty low because the probability that your vote will affect the election is basically zero. I mean, you're actually more likely to win the Powerball lottery jackpot. You're more likely to be struck by lightning. You're more likely to get a four-leaf clover on your very first try looking. You're also more likely to get a perfect NCAA basketball bracket, which has odds of 1 in 9.2 quintillion. It's very costly to be informed, so voters tend to be more expressive voters if they do vote, as opposed to instrumental voters. So realizing that their votes won't have much of an effect on the outcome of an election, individual voters have little incentive to spend much effort seeking the information needed to cast an informed ballot. So economists and public choice economists refer to this lack of incentive as the rational ignorance effect. So as a result, most voters simply rely on information that's supplied to them freely by candidates, whether it's political advertising and mass media, as well as conversations with friends and coworkers. And because of this rational ignorance, voters are uninformed on a lot of issues. Such issues will exert little influence on their political decision-making process. So ignorance isn't saying that voters are dumb or stupid. That's not what I'm saying at all. And that's not what public choice economists are saying. But what they're saying is we actually choose to be ignorant about things. We just know that it's costly to be informed. So we choose to remain in ignorance about a lot of political decision making because the benefit's just not worth the cost. Yeah? So we tend to see voters vote expressively. So in fact, what our rule of rational life would suggest is we shouldn't vote at all. I mean, instrumentally speaking, like there's not going to be much of a benefit because our vote won't have an impact. So why do we spend all of this time voting anyway? I mean, even though voter turnout is relatively low, there's still millions of people that vote. Why? We're expressive voters. I mean, why do you take the sticker, right, that you get, the I voted sticker, or share on Facebook, right, the I voted post with that circle around your face? Okay? You want to let people know, you want to express to them that you did your patriotic duty, you did your civic duty. Okay? And you also tend to show, hey, my team, right? I'm supporting my team, even though you know your vote probably won't affect the election in any way. Well, you still want to signal that you supported your candidate or your team. I mean, think about this. Would the election outcome in 2024 have changed if you had voted differently then? Probably not. If you had voted differently, chances are Donald Trump still would have won the 2024 election. Okay? So we tend to see voters vote expressively. This is just like cheering for your favorite team. When I'm watching the Browns every Sunday, I scream, I cheer, I cry, knowing, right, that they're going to lose anyway, right? But the point of that is that's not going to have an effect on the game. I mean, even if you're in the stands, there's really no effect that you clapping or cheering is going to decide whether or not the Cleveland Browns win, especially if you're at home on the couch screaming at the television. But why do we do it? There's some sort of expressive return or expressive benefit that we get for supporting our team. We want to signal to others that I'm a big football fan, I'm a big Browns fan, I'm a bigger Browns fan than anybody. That's why we do it, not because we think there's going to be an effect on the Browns' performance or on whatever your favorite team's performance is. Okay? It's because we get some sort of expressive benefit from it. So when we're uninformed about policies, but we still tend to vote for politicians anyway, it's because there's probably some sort of expressive return. We like to let people know that we're voters, that we're patriotic, that we supported the right candidate, okay? That we supported our team, that we're part of this group. That's really what a lot of voting tends to be, and that explains why so many voters are ignorant. I mean, you asked most people, heck, if I asked you guys to list me the president, the vice president, your two senators, your representative, your governor, your state reps, your state senators, what about your mayor? What about your local comptroller? What about your state treasurer? What about your local councilman, right? I mean, chances are we'd miss a lot of those. You'd be surprised. Heck, you'd be surprised how many people don't know who the vice president is. Voters are very ignorant. If I ask them about something as complicated as tax policy, when they don't even know who their state senator might be, and arguably they should know because it's a little more localized to them, I mean, why do we see them vote? Well, there's expressive returns. They don't have that much skin in the game. But what if you do have skin in the game? What did we hear a lot about from this last election? Well, betting odds were kind of all the rage in the most recent election. I mean, people kind of picked on the pollsters because they didn't get it right. The polls were saying this, the polls were saying that. But everybody was talking about betting odds, and the pollsters were mad. But it turns out the betting odds got it pretty darn right, and they were pretty close. I mean, when you have a 1/1,000,000th of a stake in the game, you don't have the same incentives as when you have a, 1 in 5 stake. I mean, that's all the insight we really need here. With different incentives, we need to understand that you're going to treat things differently. I mean, this is what price theory and microeconomics tells us. I mean, with betting odds, you had people putting their own cash on the line, doing their research. They had a much stronger incentive to be more informed and to be right about what was going to happen with the election. So I actually think these election betting odds are going to be the way of the future. They might kind of start to push, these outdated polling methods right out the door. So who knows what's going to happen? But what's cool is economics and microeconomics in particular kind of gives us that forward-looking idea. What are the incentives? And how are we going to behave differently to act in accordance with those incentives? So that's voter ignorance. Next, we're going to conclude our lecture on public choice.